Okay, so let's fire away with your questions, Stephanie.
Well, one of the questions was, is all black mold toxic?
It depends on the type, actually. So the answer is
No.
no. Yeah.
And what causes mold? I will speak to why we had mold is about a year and a half ago, we had a leak in our garage
Hmm.
and we thought we had taken care of it, but we couldn't see it. Mold dog detecting where the mold was, then we never would have tore open the walls, all the walls. But the water leak had happened in the garage and it went into the wall and then down in my basement as well. And Carl thought he had taken care of the problem, but I think one thing is once you have mold and you stop the leak, the mold still grows. And I guess that's something that we learned too, because we thought, well, there's no more water problem. Well, the mold was there and it continued to grow for this last year and a half.
Yeah, I definitely can. And I mean, that is one way that people are surprised by it is basically it happens because of small undetectable leaks. Sometimes it's behind a wall. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a faucet that you have under a sink that's leaking that you don't know that faucet's leaking. So that's how it grows. Mold likes dark, damp places, dark places where the sun doesn't shine. So, those are the places that tend to grow mold. If you have a dark corner of your house, place that's not getting a lot of sunlight, that could be getting moisture, that's typically where you're going to get mold.
Right. Um, so everyone wants to know, what is the treatment for mold toxicity?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one because it's very controversial. But the way that I treat it in my practice is I use the Quicksilver mold detoxification. If I have somebody that I'm treating for mold, I generally also check for heavy metals because the symptoms can cross react. And a lot of times, something like heavy metal toxicity can make you more sensitive to mold. And you don't want to miss that and then treat someone for mold and then have this whole underlying toxicity going on. So I use the Quicksilver kit for that also. They have a triple phase mercury test, and then they test for different metals in the blood. It's been the most sensitive test so far. I've tried different ones, Mosaic Diagnostics. I've tried, doing just 24-hour urines through Quest and LabCorp, like regular labs for metals. And that's really been the most sensitive where I found metal toxicity, where I really suspected it. I know Stephanie and I had the same dentist in town who never, did the right things when he took out mercury fillings. So, if you've had mercury drilled into your mouth, or if you had, dental work done without a dental dam where they were removing mercury, you probably are also
Yeah.
mercury toxic. So that was the test that caught it. Was the Quicksilver. It's called the Mercury Tri Test and blood heavy metals. So usually I'll do both. If one turns out positive, then I'll first go after the heavy metals because that tends to be the more serious of the two, and then I will attack the mold because you actually can't get rid of the mold toxins if you're heavy metal toxic to it. Sort of heavy metals can interfere with a lot of the detoxification pathways in your body. And heavy metal toxicity has been around a long time. I mean, there was an emperor in the Chinese dynasty. I don't know if you guys have ever seen those horses that they have had on display, like
Yeah.
here in Seattle, they had them. Well, the emperor that built that underground crazy thing with all the thousands of horses and warriors and all that, he was trying to extend his life, several thousand years ago, and he had rivers of mercury underground because they thought that would like extend your life, and he was drinking mercury.
Oh, wow.
And then back in England in the 1800s, they had people who were hatters. So hatters basically made felt hats. And, have you ever heard the expression mad as a hatter? Well,
Yeah.
the reason was that people who worked in the hat industry, they actually used mercury to make the hats more pliable. And so hatters would actually all get mad by the time they were like in their late 20s, early 30s. That's why they called them mad as a hatter, because they had mercury toxicity. And so it's something that's been around a long time. In our, in our day, it's not always there. Like if you have stable amalgams in your mouth, they may not have leached and you may not be mercury toxic. It's when people have touched them or when they break down generally is when you can get mercury from them. Fish is another big source of mercury. It's
Yeah.
people think they're getting healthy by eating fish, but if you're eating fish, you definitely want to check, lists of what fish have a lot of mercury and stay away from them. Because that can be one of the other big ways that people get toxic, and they can actually get inorganic toxins in fish that are very hard to catch on most testing. The Tri Test actually tests for both inorganic and organic mercury. And then used in preservatives and certain injectables is organic mercury, thimerosal. And when we grew up, it was actually also in our contact lens solutions. I don't know if you guys remember the thimerosal in our contact lens solutions, that was mercury. So it's something that we've all been exposed to over time. So what I do when I do the treatment is I basically first test for metals, and then I give people supplements that sort of help clear detoxification channels in your liver and most importantly, your kidneys. A lot of detoxification protocols I see don't really do anything to bind and take things through your kidneys. But you can get a lot of issues with your kidneys if this isn't done properly. So things that open the liver and kidney channels are first, and then basically binders to pull out and bind the metals and take them out. So it's a little bit of you have to be really careful because you're taking all these things to sort of open the channels and detoxify and pull things out of tissue, and then you have to bind them, about 60 minutes later. So it's quite the thing that people have to go through when they're doing it. It's not like for the faint of heart. So you got to be ready to do it. It can take, 8 weeks for a heavy metal detoxification. It can take, another 4 weeks for the mold. So it is an involved process that doesn't happen overnight. And for a lot of people, you have to go back and do it again. I have a fireman in my practice who's over and over exposed to these things. He came to me with alopecia, which is areata, which is, autoimmune hair loss that had happened because of these toxicities. And, with him, we can't really find the toxicity, but firemen are exposed to burning buildings. A lot of these